So on this course, we're going to be building a .NET Core and React application. So the first thing we're going to need to do is make sure we've got the correct software installed to enable us to do that. Now, the first thing we're going to need is the .NET Core SDK. So if you come to .net.microsoft.com, this will take you to the place where we can go ahead and download this particular SDK. So I'm just on this particular page. I'm just going to click on the download button. And this particular SDK is available for Windows, Linux, and Mac. So please make sure you select the right version for your particular operating system. Now, the current version available is .NET Core 3.0, and originally this course was released for .NET Core 2.2, but I'm just updating it to make sure that .NET Core 3 works from start to finish with this particular course. So you're okay with grabbing and downloading the .NET Core 3.0 version. If I just go and take a quick look at all of the .NET Core downloads, we can see where we're currently at in terms of .NET Core. And currently, the version available that's released is .NET Core 3.0. Now, they do make preview versions available of the upcoming releases of .NET Core, and the next one due to be released is .NET Core 3.1. Now, I wouldn't recommend getting any preview versions of the framework. What I would recommend is just downloading .NET Core 3.0. If I click on this, we'll see the latest version available of the SDK. Now, the current version is SDK 3.0.100, and that's what I'm updating this course to work with and make sure it works. Now, as long as the framework version is 3.0 and they've released a newer version of the SDK, that's probably fine. But please try and stick with the .NET Core 3.0 runtime, at least until I've had a chance to update the course and tested it with the next version that's available. So please go ahead and download and install this for your particular operating system. Now, I'm not going to insult your intelligence by showing you how to install software, but once you have this installed, then just go across to your command line and just run the command .NET-info. And this is going to tell you which versions of the SDK you've got installed. Now, I've got several installed on my machine, and it's perfectly viable to have multiple versions of this installed side by side. But what it's going to default to is using the latest version that you have available here. So if I just run .NET-version, we can see which version it's going to use when we actually go ahead and create our projects. So what we also need, because we're developing a JavaScript application using React, is we also need Node.js. And please go ahead and download and install this as well. Now, I'm not going to insult anyone's intelligence by demonstrating how to download software, but there is something I want to point out with Node.js. You can go ahead, download this, run through the installer, and this will be installed on your computer. But what I recommend you might want to do is take a look at this particular guide for installing Node.js with NVM, which is a Node version manager. Because it's not particularly easy or convenient to switch between different versions of Node without using a tool like this. And just to demonstrate what I'm talking about, I already have Node version manager installed on my computer. And if I just type in nvm ls, I'll get a list of all the different versions of Node that are available on my machine. And should I need to work with an older application that was developed using Node version 8, then I can very easily switch between them by using this tool. And I can just type in nvm use the for example, 8.11.2, and then I'll be using Node version 8.11.2 instead of the latest version. And if I go to Node-version, then I can see it says I'm on 8.11.2. Now, I don't want to use an older version, I want to use the latest version. And I'll type in Node nvm use 12.5.0. And like I say, it's not essential to use this particular tool for this course. We only need one version of Node after all. But I would recommend taking a look at this particular article and considering using NVM, because as you work on more and more JavaScript applications, you may well find that you need to switch between different versions of Node on occasions. And this particular guide gives you information about how to install it on Linux, how to install it on a Mac, and also how to install it on Windows. So please make sure you've got Node.js installed, whatever way you prefer to install it. And what we also need for version control is Git. This is a free and open source distributed version control system. And we'll be using Git to save our changes into source control as we hit various milestones on this course. So please do go ahead and install Git as well. And what we also need is a code editor or an integrated development environment. And the one that I'm going to be using to demonstrate everything on this course is Visual Studio Code. And why VS Code? Well, it's free, it's open source, and it's cross-platform as well. So the experience is going to be the same on a Mac as it is on Linux, as it is on Windows. And for that reason, this is the one I'm using to demonstrate all of the code on this course. It's not compulsory to use VS Code, and some of you may be more comfortable using Visual Studio, the full version. And that's fine, that will work just fine as well. But it's difficult for me to use Visual Studio because I'm using a Mac, so that doesn't work on a Mac, and the Visual Studio for Mac is a very different beast to Visual Studio for Windows. And Visual Studio Code as well is really fast and lightweight, and Visual Studio can be a bit bloated for the kind of code that we're writing on this particular course. But it's up to you. There is another alternative as well called Rider from JetBrains, but the only downside to that one, and it is a really good code editor as well, or IDE for what we're doing on this course, but the downside to that one is it's not free. You need to pay a subscription to make use of that. Whereas the free version of Visual Studio 2019 and Visual Studio Code is free anyway, both of these options are absolutely fine for what we're using on this course. So please make sure you have all of this software installed, because we need all of this to build our application. And what I want to talk about next is specific to VS Code, and what I want to do is run through the extensions I have installed on VS Code, because without adding extensions, then VS Code is really just a colourful text editor. And we'll need to add some functionality to VS Code for building our particular application. And we'll take a look at that next.